Hello, does this work? Hello. I have an absolute shitload of slides to go through, so I might just start. It's kind of quiet in here, which is weirding me out, but I think we'll be okay. So at the end of the talk, I do have a QR code that links to it because I will be going pretty fast and I'm covering a lot of topics. So don't worry if you miss stuff. You can just download it afterwards or ask me questions or anything else like that. So this is generally about when you've launched a game, what do you do? What are all the things you can do? Let's look at the data of what that is. What should you actually focus on and not, just do what other people do, but how do you choose where to prioritize? There's a lot of cherry-picked stuff here. It's really hard to give general advice for everything, but I've been trying to show various trends and what we've been seeing. So first of all, I want to kind of show my street cred a little bit and like who I've worked with and what I've worked on. So primarily I've had two companies. One of those is IndieBI and one of those is UwuBiz and previously Robot Teddy. We've worked with some of the biggest indie game studios in the world. These are some of the games that we've worked on or are currently working on. So IndieBI primarily manages like back catalogs. So we're like every time you see Pal World on sale, or Rust, or Celeste, Undertale, Among Us, Gang Beasts, things like that. That's my team going ahead and putting those on for the developers. It's managing about $1 billion a year, which is a crazy number. So that's pretty cool. And then UwuBiz is my own little consultancy. My last consultancy was Robot Teddy. I grew up to about 15 people, sold it, burnt out, quit, and took a year off. So this is my aim at doing it really small. So there's just 2 or 3 of us. There's me, Alex, and Melody on a merry-go-round. And these are primarily the games we're working on right now. So sledding game, we just released the demo and it kind of blew up so much that we've got hackers ruining it for everyone, which is sad. PVKK is doing super well. It's on 600,000 wishlist now. We'd like to get to around 1 million before launch. And I continue to work with Gang Beasts and support all of their kind of business and operations and things like that. So why should you care about any of this? Why should you care about managing your game after launch? Let's have a look. There's a huge amount of games each year that are being launched. Everyone's seen slides like this. It's always terrifying. More and more games launched all the time. So that's your competition. What, 20,000 games last year, more this year, over 18,000, last year alone. So according to Valve themselves, most time on Steam is spent in older games. Only 15% of last year were people playing games from last year, which is a crazy statistic. If you read public reports from games companies, because you're a loser like me, you'll see that they heavily focus on back catalog. Devolver is 88% of all their money comes from games launched, more than 1 year ago. Team 17 is 92%. So, when you're talking to publishers and thinking about that, most of their revenue is coming from, Overcooked 1, not Overcooked 2, and DLC and long tail revenue, rather than new stuff. 90% of the top sellers for the indie category, when I looked the other day, were all released before this year. So even the things that are currently popular on Steam, outside of a couple at any one point, like Megabonk at the moment and so forth, are just straight up older games. Which means that this isn't true. It's actually this. It's basically every game ever launched is your competition, which sucks because it's a lot of games. So it's no longer acceptable to just make good games or great games. You have to run about 6 different businesses as an indie team to make it work. So people outside of games have been talking about this thing for like nearly 100 years, about how to position products, where to put them, how to sell them, how to do marketing. People have been writing think pieces on this since before I was born. This is not a new concept. So everyone else is doing this. They're like, okay, we have our product. Here's how we do that. Here's the placement. Here's the promotion. Here's the price. But most game companies these days are just putting it on Steam and hoping for the best. And so I'm going to take you through some kind of obvious and less obvious things that you can do to sort of make free money and make more money than before. So at IndieBI, as I said, we're managing back catalogs for people, we're finding 20 to 30% of revenue is left on the table. So that's from tiny companies, that's from companies making $50 million a year, that's basically across the board. And that can be stuff like missing out on all of the Switch discounts because it's annoying to put it in, or not having the right price in Poland and things like that. So let's jump into what we can do. This is the lowest hanging fruit on Steam. This is just, you can go ahead and do this right now, add trading cards, add tags, go look at successful games, tick all the boxes that they've got. If you've got a little bit more time, you can do things like add achievements, add Steam Deck support, get your tick for that. But actually a lot of these things can be done just with time and a busy brain. So I've tried to split this talk into kind of two sections where sometimes as an indie company, you've got engineering cycles, you've got programmers who can go do stuff for you. Sometimes you don't, and you're just treading water, they're doing other stuff, or work for hire, and you're working as CEO or as a biz dev. So let's start out with pretending you have a team who can do stuff, right? And we'll go through all of the things that they have. So add mod support. Obviously, it doesn't make sense for every game. And actually, most games it won't make sense. But if you're making good revenue, it likely does make sense. This is from Mod.io, which is, I believe, an Australian company. So we've done a bunch of work with them to research the actual effect of putting modding in your game. And the long-term revenue effects can be really good, like 23% more, which if you're a successful indie of, let's say $1 million plus a year, that's a lot of money. It's, an extra $230,000. So that's quite a lot of burn rate. This is from, top games, top 1,000 games on Steam or so. But it also keeps people engaged. Like we've seen this with Baldur's Gate 3. They haven't done DLC, they haven't done content packs as such, but modding has kept it alive. I'm not saying everyone should go build Baldur's Gate 3, but adding tools like this does make it easy. You should really do this year one as an indie. If you're doing this 3 years after launch, no one really cares from what we've seen of the data. Some people are worried, well, if I allow mods, then people won't buy my DLC because they can just go get free stuff. It doesn't really work like that. Again, from the data we've seen, people will either buy DLC or they won't, regardless of what else there is out there. And yeah, it might be expensive. So 3 easy ways to do it. One is just straight up on Steam and use the Steam Workshop interface. Another is something like Mod.io, which is cross-platform, so you can go do consoles as well. And if you do nothing, you'll probably see mods appearing on Nexus, CurseForge, things like that. So if you look at like a lot of the Landfall games, Rounds, Peak, and so forth, they all have mods that just live on Nexus and CurseForge. They don't do anything to help that. They do make their language a little bit easier to expose certain things, which is always a good idea, but they're not actually kind of fostering a modding community, so it can still work. So make DLC. Again, like it's obvious, if you're not making any money as a game studio, probably don't make DLC, but if you're making good money, what can actually happen? So to decode this chart, gray is like base game sales over time revenue. Orange is where you've added DLC last year, and purple is the rest of the DLCs. Basically what this is trying to show is that 35% of their total money has come from adding DLCs over time, which are usually a lot cheaper than building the main game. And you can still add DLC 3-4 years after launch. Everyone gets a ping on Steam. People will go back and play the game and often buy the DLC. So it is worth it. A small tip on multiplayer games: rather than having purely stores within the game, so buying coins and stuff like that, you can have straight up DLC. Fall Guys did this before they got taken off Steam because Epic bought them, but Brawlhalla does it as well. And it means you can even discount the DLCs, which you can't really do otherwise in-game. So if you are going down the multiplayer route, you can take a look at that. So content updates, maybe less expensive than DLC to make, but it's still going to cost you time and resources, but can be really rewarding. Again, this is kind of cherry-picked, but we've seen similar trends for basically all studios that have a successful title. If you can keep doing small but consistent content updates, even without selling DLCs, you'll still make more money than if you just leave it alone and let it sit and let it do nothing. So purple is like estimated revenue without doing any content updates, so good, but it's just a fairly linear line. Orange is like amount attributed to big updates. Some of them have huge upticks, some of them don't, but cumulatively, it's really important, and it really does keep your revenue growing. So add multiplayer, this is like a stupid one because it's really hard and often doesn't make sense. But it's hard to argue with the data of games that have done it that makes sense. Like Project Zomboid was one of the biggest ones. They're local to me in Newcastle in the UK. There's no way these games could have got these spikes without adding some kind of multiplayer. People will help you do this now. Like Coherence are just offering it as a service. Like, we'll take your game, we'll make it multiplayer. And there's some back-end costs for them associated. But it's no longer as hard as it used to be. And for some games, it really does make sense. So I guess I wanted to show that for studios that have gone to the time and effort on multiplayer that are making good money, it's almost always that they'll kind of, really maximize that, and it's worth the investment. So IP collaborations, this can be pretty low-hanging fruit. This has got a lot more popular in indie in the last 5 years or so, I would say. IP can be very complex, and basically you have to do some maths. Like, if you're going to pay for the license, how do you sell, 10x that license fee in terms of units? Can you even sell things in your game? Are people buying skins? Are people buying DLC and so forth? Is this just a nice, we'll give you our indie IP and we'll take yours? Is it people that's going to be interested in your game? When we were doing Among Us, there was a lot of these. Power Wash also, they've done stuff with Shrek, with Wallace and Gromit, with SpongeBob and all sorts. Some of them do really well, some of them don't. I think one of the main rules and lessons that we learned here is to choose your partners wisely. Indie companies are really easy to work with. It's like, hey, can we use the Red Among Us guy? They send you a contract that's like, sure, go ahead, and then off you go. We put Bing Bong from Peak in our sledding game demo just a couple weeks ago. There wasn't even a contract. We were just like, hey, can we put Bing Bong in? They're like, yeah, that's fine. They sent over the files. We put them in the game. People really like it. It's good for them. It's good for us. So that's kind of nice. If you want to monetize it, usually you have to pay for a license or something. But also you can do it where, so we added a Scream mask into Among Us around the time of the film Scary Movie. So for them, it made sense. Like, they got something out of it. We got something out of it. But like, will you see uplift in people buying your game? It really depends if it's the right audience and if they're actually going to care about it. So console launch, like probably something you'd pass to other people and pay for it. So it depends how you're doing. It kind of doesn't matter when you do it. I think the main lesson on console launch is you can make a little bit of extra money if you just do some biz dev and hustling and putting your game on various platforms. But if you want meaningful differences to your general revenue, throw it on console and see what it does. Like, even though Switch, in this example, was launched years later, it still increased long-tail revenue by 50%, which is massive. So consoles can cost, what, 50 to 150 per platform, depending on the game. But if you're making meaningful revenue already, it's almost always worth it to go down that. So what if you have no engineers? You just have someone like me or yourself, or you're like a one-person indie studio, and you've got time and maybe some money. Like, what can you do there? You can sell your PC games in other places than Steam. This is where there's some pretty cool data for you. So these are like sell native downloads that include DRM, so Steam, but in other places, Epic Game Store, you all know about, itch, Microsoft. Is it worth it? Kinda, sometimes, maybe not really. So like Humble's 0.08%. This was taken from our whole IndieBI catalog, which is about $4 billion worth of games every year. So it's pretty consistent. This is a few months old, these specific slides of data that I pulled, but it's basically the same. So it's quite high effort to begin with from a production point of view. There's a lot of assets, there's a lot of upkeep. If you're doing content updates, you have to update it everywhere at one point. I usually do it because it's nice to support more than just Steam and not have a complete monopoly. But monetarily, it doesn't really help a ton. There are super outliers. So these two games launched exclusively on Epic for a year before coming to Steam. So, one of them sold 45% on Epic, one sold 20%, which is huge. Usually you see 2 to 5%. So it can depend. It can depend on which game you're looking at. Key sales, so these are mostly free. These are kind of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. Some work on getting things set up, usually of just negotiating back and forth. Low sales, really, generally, unless you're like particularly appeal to the GOG crowd, because you've got that kind of game. Like the Myst team, they do really well on GOG. Itch, I prefer to use as a kind of experimentation platform. All of Bip and Bits' games, like we made Dome Keeper, PVKK, they all go on Itch first, and then we sort of see what's popular and bring it over to Steam. It's still worth doing these platforms, I think. These are very low effort, low sales things. So you put, keys on Humble, keys on Fanatical. These are people looking for like real low sales. But what you can do is just negotiate buyouts. So you can be like, buy 5,000 keys off me at 20% of the price I'd sell them on Steam. You get a quick cash injection. The main rule here is just always ask for a bit more money. They'll offer you something, just up the price. They'll usually say yes. Then there's store bundlers. So something I've been learning more about the past couple of years, a lot of countries have their own very local key sites and so forth. So France especially, the Netherlands. Genba used to be the biggest for like, just take 100,000 keys, Genba, go and sell them in all these different stores, and then, give us some of the money. Exertis Storm has been doing really well recently, especially in Nordic. That's who like Paradox use, Raw Fury use, people like that. Very low effort, again, very low sales, but it's worth doing if you have some time. There's been a lot of talk about direct sales. Like there was this really stupid LinkedIn post by someone that's like, why should you sell on Steam when you could just sell on your own website? You'd make 25% more money than anywhere else. Their example was like, just do this, just have that, it's fine. My response was it makes no money because it straight up doesn't. How do I know that? We were selling Superhot online from like day one. Superhot and Superhot VR probably grossed over $50 million lifetime. I think we about covered the cost of the website by what we sold directly. At the peak of Among Us, it might even still be alive. I haven't checked. I think we had like buyamong.us, and you could go and buy like multi-packs of 10, 4, everything like that. It was all discounted. Again, no one bought it. Like people just straight up don't care. So I think it's a waste of time. It's basically free. Xsolla give lots of money to stuff. So that's cool, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense, to be honest. So bundles, this is something else. If you run an indie studio, you've probably done these for launch and so forth. It's really easy, but it's also really easy to get wrong. The main tip that I've learned both from data and experience is do small bundles. It can be really tempting to have like 5, 6 games and build up a big thing. If you're a local multiplayer game, you go and grab 5 more. People prefer smaller bundles because actually most of the effect of having a bundle on Steam is you get additional visibility slots. So that's all. It's giving you a chance to get seen by more eyeballs. People aren't really buying bundles for the discount from what we see. It's just being seen by more people, so there's a knock-on effect. You can do cross-publisher bundles. Good ones have something like a 12% increase in long-tail revenue, which is good. Bad ones can be like 0.5 or less, where it just doesn't matter at all. So these are some bundles I put together for Gang Beasts. You can see here from the breakup from 3 different bundles. One was like 90% of all the revenue from those bundles. The other 2 were really bad. A tip not a lot of people know because it's a really loser thing to know is that bundles are ordered on Steam pages by the revenue that they've generated unless you pin one. So usually you can go and look at other people's Steam pages, see what the top bundle is, try and emulate that. You'll often find, like this one, it's just 2 games that live within the same kind of genre universe. We thought the Physics Chaos bundle would do really well, like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, Besiege, Gang Beasts, What the Car, like these are all huge popular games. No one cared. It sold, like 3% of all the bundle money we got that year. So it was nice to do with them, but it doesn't really matter. If you have a bunch of games, you can do a publisher bundle. You don't need to ask Steam for this. You can just set it up yourself. It's pretty easy. And this is basically it. Like all bundles are doing are bringing more people to your store page, and all you're really trying to do on Steam is get seen by people. So there's multiple ways of setting it up. I kind of like it when you can go and buy a game magically cheaper because you already own the other game in the bundle. So this one, if you just buy the game straight up, it's £22.40, but I could buy it for £20.16 because I owned whichever other game it is. So it does lead to weird stuff. Lewis from PlayStation made me rewrite this slide because it was a little bit longer. You can do bundles on other platforms. It's really painful and a lot of effort. Maybe I'll tell you in a year if it's worth it because we're practicing it now and trying it out. But until they make it easier and it doesn't take a full day to figure everything out, I think they're going to struggle to really get traction on cross-publisher bundles on consoles, for example. So to recap, smaller cross-publisher bundles are better. Just do 2, maybe 3 games. Do your own publisher bundles if you've got more than 3 games yourself, and don't have too many at once. Don't make people scroll through your page. China, relaunch in China, launch in China. This is what you basically need to think about when you're thinking about China. Localization. If you don't have localization on day one, I'm generalizing massively, but the Chinese gamers will never forgive you. And you will never receive the reviews you would if you have it day one. They will always see themselves as an afterthought, which sucks, but it is what it is. There are, counterpoints to that. Like this game launched Chinese language, I think like 4 years after launching, and then it did super well. It massively grew, so it can happen. I'm still trying to fix Gang Beasts in China. We've still not really recovered from having a couple years of no Chinese language, and it's been a long road to get to that point. There's a lot of stuff people don't know about China, though. It's not just like localize on Steam and have it. There are a bunch of, earlier I talked about Fanatical, Green Man Gaming, Humble. They also exist in China. There are Chinese companies doing this. And so I just wanted to show you some of these because these are like real websites that sell a lot of video games in China. This is Fanbook, this is Haybox, this is Phoenix, and this is Songquo. Just know that these exist. If your game is doing pretty well anywhere and you have Chinese localization, just work with these people and get it out because, similar to people who only buy from CD keys and so forth, there are these people as well, and you'd rather be the one selling it than on the gray market. Mostly get a Chinese partner is also what I'd suggest, within reason. So IOI Gamer and HeyU, these are marketing companies who you just either pay straight up, like a retainer, or you give them some revenue share on the back end. I don't recommend giving Chinese publishers revenue share. Often they can ask for like 30% of all traffic from China that they take. But if you do some digging, you realize they've got hundreds and hundreds of games each. You're never going to be treated the same as everyone else. So I don't super recommend it. It's very popular to just go, well, I can't really do much in China anyway. I'll pass it over to Gamera or Maple Whispering, but I don't want to shit talk them too much. Just do your research, because I think for most games it doesn't make sense, and you can get by just spending a few thousand on some local creators and so forth. So physical release, does it make money? If you're big, yes. Collector's editions are mostly fan service. Like, you won't make a lot of money from collector's editions. It's cool to have, and it's nice to give your fans something to buy and like display, and that's nice as a creator. There's a lot of people doing this for you. Serenity Forge, Lost in Cult, so forth, super rare. But you won't really make much actual revenue from it, but it is nice. And then there's the kind of double A style. They did Metaphor, they did Pacific Drive. Again, you're not moving hundreds of thousands of units, so you really don't make much money. This is what will make you money in physical, standard, straight-up boxes. Switch 2 is difficult, is the best way to put it, because the price of the cartridge itself, like as a developer or as a publisher, is so high that the margins are very, very small unless you have a $50, $60 game. Like if you're trying to sell a $20 game on Switch 2 physical, you're really going to struggle to even break even. This is what I learned, which I did find interesting. If you are AAA, you have to do day one physical. If you're an indie who's done well, you can launch a physical edition many years after launching, and you will still make good money. So it doesn't matter. Don't panic about doing day and date. In fact, I'd recommend not doing day and date because your added work back time is extended by like 4 months at least. So just don't rush it. Don't sim ship. It makes no sense. There are some genres. Look, Australia. There are some genres that do much, much better in physical than anything else. Gang Beast as well does very well on physical because parents go in, it's safe, they buy it for their kids. So know who you're marketing to. Release merch. Every games company does this. I've yet to meet a games company that makes meaningful money. Not everything's about money. Like, it's kind of just cool to have stuff. There's some outliers. Again, the Undertale stuff, the Balatro stuff is big enough that it makes revenue. But unless you like really hit mainstream, like if you're on shelves, I wish I knew Australian stores, like Woolworths maybe, Smiths. I don't know what you have here. Mary's laughing at Woolworths, so maybe not. Unless you're on shelves with stuff there in the like slop area, you're not really going to be making any money. So what I like to do is just be a little bit more targeted. Nendoroid, for example, like high quality figurines, you can make a few hundred, you can sell them. You won't really make money, but it's nice to have. Makeship is like the time limited one where you can, they'll make 2,000 plushies and sell them. I do like to work with people like Fourth Wall or IGN on my games because I want kids to be able to buy at Christmas, like parents to be able to buy their kids something. The problem with Makeship and Nendoroid and things like that is it's either so high price or it's so time limited that it's not a impulse buy for people. And as like a parent of 2 kids myself, I want to buy the non-knockoff version of something that they're into. And if I was only able to do that, like for one, month period 3 years ago for a game I've missed, then it's kind of shitty and sad, and I have to get something off Amazon, which is just not the same. So I do like to have the option, even if it's like print on demand or something. It's nice to have if you have a game that enough people want to do that. Now I'm just going to show you a lot more data if you weren't already bored by my jet-lagged monotone voice. This is IndieBI, go look at it, it's nice, it's my little company. We made IndieBI at Superhot, actually, so this is the Superhot team that put it together. We were basically doing really well with Superhot in 2013, 2014, and we had no way of answering the question of like, how many copies of our game did we sell last week? How many of those was on Xbox? How many of that was in Korea? Like, there was just zero ability. So we built a bunch of scrapers and tools, starting letting other developers use it, and then ended up kind of making it into a whole business. So I said earlier on there was some lowest hanging fruit. This is by far your lowest hanging fruit. Like, if any of you have a game on Steam, you could probably go fix it right now, for sure. And here's some examples. So 2015, a peso was 5 cents in America. Fast forward 10 years, it's now 0.09 cents. If people haven't updated their Argentina price, like, guess what happens? It's absolutely awful. So if you look at the top chart here of just revenue in Turkey, it looks pretty stable. Like, the actual money that you're taking in from Steam from Turkey in this, 7-8 year period looks fine. But if you look at the bottom chart, actually, the revenue is only stable because the currency collapsed and then everyone started VPNing into Turkey and buying 4 times as many copies. So if you're only looking at revenue, not units, you're missing half of the story. So same revenue, much, much higher units. Sorry, Valve, but their advice is really bad. Here's another couple of examples. So they took a long time to update Argentina. Like, we beat them by a couple of years on that. They got faster in 2023. But Poland is, for some reason, massively victimized by this all the time. Maybe it's the same with Australian dollar pricing. I didn't check, but there's like a whole Polish subreddit dedicated to why our games launching that are more expensive to buy in Polish currency than, US dollar currency. I mean, things aren't great in America, but the dollar is still, a higher buying power. At the time when I wrote this, I went to look at just the Polish general subreddit, and it was about Outer Worlds 2 coming out, and the Polish price was, nearly double where it was elsewhere. And this is just Valve's default pricing, so go fix it now. If you've got a game, just go and check. Go and just, look at the matrix and make sure that it's been updated within the last 6 months at least. Here's one example. I think this might be Superhot. Polish price was way too high. We halved the price, made an extra $500,000, tripled the revenue. Like, it was very, very clear that people just weren't buying the game because it was just priced too high. DLC pricing is kind of similar. So this is an example of 3 DLCs. One of them is making a lot more revenue than the others. It could be like store positioning, it could be the amount of content, it could be how old the DLC is. It just straight up cost more. Like, what we found is that people either buy all of your DLC or they don't buy any DLC at all. Like, it's different if we're talking Train Sim or The Sims or something with, thousands of dollars of DLC. But if you have 3 or 4 DLC and people like your game, they will end up buying all of it. So you don't have to treat DLC like you do with your main games. Like, older doesn't mean worse. You can discount DLCs differently and price them the same. And you basically, the one that's a higher price makes more revenue. Almost entirely of the time that we look at this, the higher price the DLC, the more revenue you make, because people just, if they like your game enough that they're going to buy DLC, they're not like waiting for it to go on sale. They'll just go and buy it, especially because it's usually a smaller cost. So just experiment, track the data, kind of follow it very closely. So this is a situation we had, I think, about 18 months ago. On one of the games I manage. So I was just looking at the return rates of our game in each territory, in each country, and comparing it to the NDBI kind of average that we tracked across everything. Quick point on NDBI, by the way, it's not like Newzoo or Gamalytic or anything like that, where they are usually buying credit card data and matching that to kind of averaging purchases across games to try figure out what they're doing and tracking wish list data and so forth. NDBI is used directly by publishers and developers, so they're using it to scrape their own data. So the data we have is like real first-party cross-platform data, so it's very real. So we're able to go, okay, across the $4 billion a year of sales that we see, which is mostly not AAA, right? This is AA and indie for sure. China's pretty high anyway, 13%, 14% is usually their behavior, but we were like 41% refund. So they buy the game, refund it almost half of the time. That's really bad. So we looked at it over time and we saw it kind of getting worse and worse. Like it sort of jumped up a little bit early. I've tried to figure out what that initial spike is, and I can't find anything of why that is, but it jumped up and then consistently got worse. So we went and looked at the actual review scores in each language to see if there was anything similar, and they're all basically in the same region. So this is, Korea, this is Hong Kong, this is, areas in Asia. And so we looked at the actual analysis and translated it all to English, and ping and server lag issues with 40% of it, right? And so you would argue that we should have been able to tell that people in China were having a really bad time connecting to other players in our multiplayer game, but we had so many other things that we were trying to think about that we just didn't dig that deep. We didn't have analytics in the game from day one. Like, if you're an indie dev, you know that you don't really build this stuff to plan for success. You just hope to get something out the door. So this took us a long time to figure it out, and it was really only by just staring at data and being like, why is this the case? Like, how can I spend half a day trying to fix pricing and trying to follow data rather than making more TikToks or planning a PAX exhibition or something, right? Like, I strongly believe if people just spent more time being a bit boring in their job and trying to do the boring stuff, they would make their company more money and then their job more stable. And I think it can be really dull, so people don't do it, but I do think it's important. So discount plan, I think this is like the third time I've said this is your lowest hanging fruit, so bear with me. This is harder than fixing your pricing. You fix your pricing once every 6 months. It's not so hard. This is an ongoing thing, but it will make you so much more money. Like, as I said earlier, we see that people are leaving 25, 30% of money on the table. Most of that is just discounting. The main thing that I've learned from discounting, from having a company that does it and running indie companies that use it a lot. Gang Beast has been going 10 years now. I was at Superhot for 8 years. These are games that they're selling for a very long time. They become evergreen, and a lot of NDBI's client base is the same. Celeste, Undertale, these are games that continue to sell years on from when they first launched. Is you're not dealing with you can't look at it as individual mindsets. You can't be like, the marketing mix, this guy, he waits for a sale. This guy uses, price tracking data to see when it's, we've been 40%, I'll wait for the next 40%. You're dealing with cohorts that are so unfathomably massive on Steam that you just have to treat every purchase as basically an impulse purchase and not worry too much. You can drop your discount to 60% and then go back to your normal 30 and never worry about that. It's not like people will go, well, I'm going to wait for it to go to 60 because there's another 5 million people Steam will show your game to at the time that might do it. So some games more than double the amount of money that they make by just discounting better. I hate this chart, and it's a really hard chart to read. Basically what it's saying is on Steam alone, if you change the amount of discount days you have from like 10, 11, which is the usual Steam sales, you can go up by over 20% on Steam alone. Switch is even more, and actually we find when we kind of approach new companies or anything, a lot of the time they just aren't discounting on Switch. And for anyone who's been on the back end of Switch, it's really obvious why they aren't discounting on Switch, because it really hurts the brain to do, but it's like just eat the pain, because you will just make free money. And it's not a nice job to do. It's nicer to go and make some cool marketing assets, but this will have a bigger impact. So a couple quick tips. Steam will always suggest a 7-day sale. It's like same for most of the calendared events they do. Any custom events, if they invite you to like, a multiplayer event or something, it'll suggest a 7-day sale. Always do a 14-day sale. Like, you will always make more money. And this chart is literally showing that. It's saying duration of discount, it's not quite linear. You will just make more. It's a little fiddly to set up, but once you do it once, you can do it again. The more time you're on discount, the more money you make. It really is as simple as that. It's basically IndieBI's entire model is people being too lazy to do that, so we do it for them. So if all you do is just be on discount, just go ahead and do it. We've got quite a few examples now of when developers have paused their discounts, so they've taken the game off discount. Sometimes this is because they're trying to track a certain review score, right? So they're on like 80, they don't want to drop down to 79 by bringing in new players. Sometimes it's just due to them going on holiday and not setting anything. And you can see that basically everything plummets, like not only sales, but the amounts of people that look at your store page, the amounts of wishlist additions, the amounts of followers, everything just falls off a cliff. So it erodes your store page visibility, it erodes your wish list health. It's not just revenue. Like discounting on Steam is such a trained behavior now for players that if you don't do it, you drop off, you get forgotten about. I guess maybe it sucks a little bit, but that's the case, but that's the world we live in. So I do have an annotated version of this. We basically tracked every games publisher there is and did some basic research of how many discounts are they missing a year on like Switch and Steam, and what like pricing of their game, is that correct? And then 3 or 4 more things. And you can see here that some are very, very good. I think actually, unfortunately maybe for some, the bottom right is Team 17. They're pretty good at that. Not everything, but they're good at that. Top left, I won't call them out, but these are some big publishers. These are publishers who are out there, giving talks and everything like that with huge marketing teams and budgets to spend on stuff. They're not doing the basics, and I think that kind of sucks. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're not doing all the boring stuff, because the people whose entire job is to do the boring stuff also aren't really doing it very well, and that is pretty sad. What have we learned? My talks are too long. Shipping the game is only step 1. Just get it out, and then all of the other hard work comes. It doesn't matter if you're busy. You have to find time to care about this. You can turn a game that is just about keeping your studio afloat into one that's extending your runway by just spending a few days a month doing the boring stuff and trying to do it. And if you do nothing else, just go and fix your discounting. Go and put it on sale on each one. Do 14-day sales. Track your cooldowns. It's just a spreadsheet. So I did make this. I'm not going to go through it. This is my, I know there exists on the personal finance Reddit's flowcharts for what you should do once you start making money. You can take a picture of this. This is how I would approach it. If I'd shipped a game, I'd be like, okay, I'm doing all the basic stuff. I've got my key sales, I've got my bundles, I've fixed my store page. Now what Mary was laughing at is the majority of your cash in high yield accounts. It's such a boring point, but if you can make 5% on top of all the money you've got from Steam before paying tax, it's worth doing, right? Like most of this talk is about, it's worth doing this stuff because it all adds up. That's it. That's me as a little boy. I don't know why I included this. I thought I looked nice and cute, so I did put that. If you want to get a copy of the deck itself, you can take a picture of that. If that doesn't work, you can just ask me for it after or message me on Blue Sky or something like that. Thank you very much. It's kind of a small audience here, so it felt a little bit weird doing that, but hopefully that was useful to some of you. We've got time for any questions you want, so thank you very much. I don't know how the questions work or if people have questions. Do I need to point at people or do you shout? What should we do? There's a mic going up. I'll point and they'll yell. Okay, how about at the front there, with your hand up? Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm gonna.
Can you yell out your question? Okay, yeah, just make sure we speak. Sorry. You mentioned cooldowns for discounts. How long do you normally recommend for that?
So I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I don't. It's basically it's a rule. It's usually best practice to wait 3 weeks between discounts. What I mean by cooldowns is each platform has really specific rules for how often you can go on discount and how long before the last discount before you do the next one. And so in a vacuum, you would just put your game on sale for 2 weeks, wait for the 3-week mandated cooldown, put it again on for 2 weeks, and just repeat that ad infinitum. We're not in a vacuum, though, because what you're really trying to do is hitting the summer sales and the winter sales. Then you have to take into account any content update plans you have or DLCs. You have to take into account usually once or twice a year you can ask for a daily deal or a weekend deal. So you sort of, the way that we do it is we get our tent pole events, which is, okay, we have to be in every summer sale. We have to, maybe do Next Fest for this. We're doing an update here. Get all of those in the calendar, and then using the rules that Steam set, you try and track, okay, what can I fit in where? So there's not really a way of answering your questions. It's mostly each platform has their own rules. So you either use IndieBI's inbuilt calendar, or you just make your own calendar that uses all these rules, which is what most people do and have a spreadsheet. So yeah, it's a lot more about what the actual mandated rules are, plus what your, I guess, marketing plan is, and then working backwards from that. So you can find out on each platform, basically.
Thank you.
If that's what you meant. Okay, anyone else? Just behind you, yeah?
On your bubble diagram, I understood you pointed out the top left corner where people leave us around the table and the bottom right corner where they're doing a good job. What was going on in the top right corner? There was so much bubble there.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is not a touch screen. The red button doesn't work and the mouse isn't moving, so I don't know. I don't know how to go back to the other slide. If I remember correctly, so up there was they are hitting every opportunity and all of their prices are right. They're basically leaving no money on the table. Up here in the top right, it might be that their pricing is absolutely out of whack, but they're on sale all of the time, so they're doing pretty well. There's about 3 or 4 axes we're trying to track on that chart. The bottom one being how much revenue are they ignoring, which is kind of hard to explain in a whole chart. But yeah, it's usually the delta between some people, and the problem is, right, is you go to any different indie company, the person whose job it is to care about discounting schedule is like a different person at every company. Sometimes it's the marketing team, sometimes it's BD, sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's like nobody. So there's just a wild variance across all of this. In mobile, I hate mobile, almost everything about mobile, but in mobile, the one thing they understand is using data to make money. Unfortunately, they use it for evil, but nobody uses data in PC gaming, and they should do, right? Like if on average every games company is leaving 25% of their revenue off the table, and you're looking at charts that like the games industry was 30 billion this year, it's a lot of money for everyone that is just not being able to reach customers who can't afford to buy their game. Like, that's the easiest way to look at it. Like, I keep talking about making more money, which is the end goal for us as a developer, but what you're actually doing is just making your game more accessible to more people because there's a price point they would buy it at. So yeah, it's mostly, to answer the question and not whatever I was just talking about, it's mostly maybe very good at discounting, but bad at just checking pricing, something like that. Something's out of whack. Anyone else? Yeah, hello.
So you talked a lot about, focused a lot on the discounting frequency and duration, much less on the depth of those discounts.
Yeah.
Does that have a meaningful impact whether every time you're going in for 20% versus?
No, yeah, so the question was, does the discounting depth matter? Yeah, absolutely. It's just almost impossible to generalize on discounting depth because there's so many variables. The general, okay, so there are a couple rules. 20% on Steam gets you an email send out. So if you're doing a 15% discount on Steam, it's almost pointless. Maybe the only time you could do that is at like a launch discount of 10 or 15% because you're already getting an email sent out to everyone who has wish lists. So you might want to like do 15% day one, and then 3 months later, 4 months later, do the 20% to like send out another email blast. Beyond that, it's just experimentation, and it's fine to experiment. It's fine to go down to 60%, as I said earlier, and then, okay, we sold, quadruple the units, but actually we've made less revenue than when we were 30%. Let's go back to 30%. You're not teaching consumer behavior because there are so many of them that it doesn't matter. So yeah, discount depth definitely matters, and that's where it just depends on each company. So when we have clients at IndieBI, some of them will say, don't care, do whatever your analysts think is best for the game, go wild, do all of that. Some of them say, we never want to be more than 40% off, so work within those confines. And then there's some games like Project Zomboid who've said they'll never be more than 50% off, so you can always know that you can buy it. So yeah, it does matter, but it's very, very hard to generalize that because it's so individual. Anyone else? Yeah, you're okay then. Go.
Regional pricing.
Yep.
Fixing regional pricing, is it just sweeping through CBD and trying to get them all to zero, or is there anything more?
I mean, so the sophisticated version is to really keep an eye on like global FX markets and trends and try and see what's crashing and what's not crashing. The easiest way is just every 6 months, take the pricing matrix that you've got on Steam, put it in a spreadsheet, and then in another column, put the live like Google Finance function of those currencies and track the delta between them and make it red if it's more than like 30 cents, right? Like it's not a science, but it's close enough where you will be able to see if something has had a significant enough change. Argentina and Turkey were major ones that Steam ended up changing, but there are others that just aren't, either they're way too cheap or they're way too expensive. So yeah, it's not something you have to do all the time, but it's worth spending a couple of hours just creating yourself a sheet and then checking it twice a year maybe, and that'll be good enough.
So you don't feel like you get much more appeal to get like purchasing power?
Sure. So we do both. Like, has currency crashed? We look at the like Big Mac index, which is a pretty good purchasing power. Like, we use 3 or 4, but my team is like 5 data analysts, and so you don't really have those at indie companies, so you don't really need to go that deep. If you can go that deep, do it, because it is worth it, but it's only really worth it at that level if you're making, $10 million a year, then it's, a change of 2% is really meaningful. If you're not, and you're making $1 million or 500 or 200, it's probably you're better spent doing something else. So yeah, it's one of those things that it kind of depends. But yeah, it is a pretty interesting topic, especially when, the Polish gaming community feels so unfairly victimized because for literally no reason, they're just having to pay more than their counterparts in America and other European companies. All right, I'm being told time, so thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.